Imagine an enemy that sweeps across continents like wildfire. They move faster than any army on Earth. They destroy everything in their path. They've conquered more territory than any civilization in human history. They're led by military geniuses who seem to see 10 moves ahead. Soldiers fear them so much they abandon their cities without a fight. Kings surrender before the Mongols even arrive. For decades, they seemed invincible, unstoppable, godlike. But in 1260, something unprecedented happened. A smaller army, warriors many called slave soldiers, defeated the most feared war machine humanity had ever seen. Not through superior numbers, not through advanced weaponry. They won using a single trick, a strategy so clever, so perfectly executed, that the Mongols never saw it coming. The question that echoes through history isn't how they won. It's this: how did they even think to try? This is the story of the Battle of Ain Jalut. This is how one man pulled off the impossible. If you love untold stories from history that changed the world, hit like so more people discover it, and subscribe. This is just the beginning. To understand how the impossible happened, we need to meet the men who made it possible. Their names were Qutuz and Baibars. They weren't born to power. They weren't princes. They were slaves. In the world of medieval Islam, slavery meant something different than what you might imagine. These weren't field slaves. They were warrior slaves, purchased as boys, trained from childhood in the arts of war, horseback riding, and military strategy. In Arabic, they were called Mamluks. The word means owned. But the Mamluks were owned by no one's will but their own. The system was brutal and brilliant. Young boys were selected for their physique and intelligence. They were torn from their families, often sold into the system by poor parents hoping their sons would find power and wealth. Then came the training, relentless, unforgiving. They learned to ride horses like they were born in the saddle. They learned to fire arrows from a galloping horse with terrifying accuracy. They learned the sword, the lance, the dagger. They learned strategy, discipline, honor. Most importantly, they learned loyalty, not to a king but to each other, to their brothers in arms. By the time a young Mamluk was old enough to fight, he was a weapon, perfectly honed, emotionally hardened, absolutely lethal. Qutuz arrived in Egypt as a prisoner. Baibars arrived the same way. Both were young. Both were survivors. Both had watched the world burn. When they met, Egypt was trembling. The Mongols had already conquered Baghdad, the greatest city in the Islamic world, a center of learning, art, and philosophy, had fallen to the horsemen from the east. Hundreds of thousands were dead. The libraries burned. The scholars slaughtered. The caliph himself had been executed. The news spread like a plague through every Islamic kingdom. The message was clear: nobody was safe. The Mongols were coming for Egypt. To understand what the Mamluks were about to face, you need to understand the Mongols. They weren't just warriors. They were architects of conquest. They were strategists who thought differently than any general in the Islamic world. When they looked at an enemy, they didn't see soldiers and walls. They saw weakness. They saw opportunity. The Mongols under Genghis Khan had created something entirely new, a military machine built on speed, intelligence, and psychological warfare. They could move armies faster than anyone on Earth. Their logistics were perfect. They had supply lines that stretched across continents. Their tactics were fluid and adaptive. But their greatest weapon wasn't a sword or an arrow. It was terror. They used fear like a weapon. Before they attacked a city, they would spread rumors. The Mongols are coming. They can't be stopped. They kill everyone. They take no prisoners. Sometimes, entire cities would surrender without a fight. Soldiers would abandon their posts. Walls that could hold for months would fall in days because the defenders simply lost the will to fight. And often, the rumors were true. Their leader in this campaign was Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan himself. Hulagu had command of perhaps 150,000 horsemen. He had siege engineers who could break any wall. He had generals who had never lost a battle. He had conquered the Middle East piece by piece, taking territory with almost mechanical precision. But in 1258, something happened that no one expected. Hulagu received news from the east. There was trouble back home in Mongolia, political struggles, succession issues. He had to leave. He had to return to defend his own position. And so, Hulagu left his lieutenant, Kitbuga, behind to finish the conquest of Egypt. Kitbuga was given perhaps 40,000 men. Still a massive force, still far outnumbering any single Islamic kingdom. For Egypt, this was bad news. For Qutuz and Baibars, it was their only chance. Egypt in 1260 wasn't united. It was fractured, divided between different power centers and ambitious men. The Mamluk factions were strong, but they weren't supreme. There was still a sultan, a man named Nasir. He was weak. Many thought he was finished. But Qutuz had a plan. He moved against Nasir quietly, methodically. He didn't try to kill him. He simply positioned himself as the protector, the man who could save Egypt from the Mongol storm. He consolidated power among the Mamluks. He unified the different factions. He made them understand, we stand together or we fall separately. Then he did something bold. He sent envoys to the Mongols, not to surrender, but to negotiate. He was buying time. He was gathering information. He wanted to know everything. Their numbers, their positions, their commanders, their weaknesses, their next moves. Meanwhile, Baibars was doing something else entirely. Baibars was scouting. He rode out into the Palestinian hills, the valleys, the narrow passages. He was mapping terrain. He was thinking like a hunter. A Mongol force of 40,000 is massive, but an army that size has limits. It's powerful on open ground, but in confined spaces, in narrow valleys, their numbers become less important. Baibars found a place called Ain Jalut, the spring of Goliath. It was a valley, not huge, but large enough to hide troops. It was narrow enough that the Mongols couldn't use their most powerful advantage: speed and maneuverability across open ground. It was perfect, but finding the place was only half the battle. Here's where we have to pause and ask the real question. How do you defeat an enemy that has never been defeated? How do you beat an army of warriors who have won every battle they've fought? You can't do it with conventional tactics. You can't line up your army and hope you have more soldiers. The Mamluks knew this. Qutuz knew this. Baibars knew this. So they had to think differently. They had to understand the Mongols not as an invincible force, but as human beings. Soldiers, warriors with habits and patterns. And every pattern can be turned against you if you understand it well enough. The Mongols had one tactic they used repeatedly, a tactic that had worked for them time and time again. It was called the feigned retreat. The Mongols would appear to charge forward, then suddenly break formation and run backward, creating confusion and breaking the enemy's lines. Then, when the enemy followed, thinking they were winning, the Mongol cavalry would split into flanking positions and crush them from the sides. It was brilliant. It was devastating. It was also predictable if you were looking for it. Baibars realized something profound. The Mongols were so used to winning, so confident in their tactics, so convinced of their superiority that they might not see the trap coming if someone used their own trick against them. It was a gamble, a massive, world-changing gamble. But it was the only chance Egypt had. The year is 1260. Summer is turning to fall. The Mamluks are ready. They've trained. They've prepared. They've unified. Now they move into position. Kitbuga and his Mongol force are advancing toward Egypt. They're moving with typical confidence. Swift, methodical, expecting no real resistance. Why would there be resistance? The Mamluks are slaves. The Mamluks are weak. The Mamluks have never beaten a Mongol army. Qutuz marches north with his main force. He's bringing the best of the Mamluk cavalry. Thousands of warriors on horseback, disciplined, trained since childhood, hungry to prove that they can be more than slaves. They can be legends. Baibars scouts ahead. He's already at Ain Jalut preparing, setting up positions, deciding where each unit will hide, calculating sight lines and angles of attack. He's thinking 3 moves ahead, then 5. The two armies are on a collision course. On July 3rd, 1260, the scouts report back. The Mongols are coming. They'll reach Ain Jalut tomorrow. That night, the Mamluks don't sleep. They check their weapons. They tighten their saddles. They whisper prayers. Some of them think they're going to die tomorrow. Most of them know they probably are. But they're ready. Dawn breaks. The sun rises over the valley of Ain Jalut. The Mamluks are in position. Baibars is hidden with his reserves. Qutuz is with the main force visible, ready to be seen. Then the Mongols arrive. Kitbuga sees the Mamluk army, smaller than his force, significantly smaller. From his perspective, this is routine. Another battle, another victory. He's confident, too confident. The Mamluks appear nervous. They seem ready to break. Qutuz is rallying them, but they look desperate. Exactly like an army that knows it's about to lose. Kitbuga orders the charge. The Mongol cavalry surges forward. There's no subtlety here, just overwhelming force. They're so used to winning that they don't bother with complex maneuvers. They just charge. They rely on speed and shock and the psychological terror of facing the Mongol horde. For a moment, it works. The Mamluks see the horsemen coming toward them like an avalanche. The ground shakes under the weight of thousands of hooves. The sound is deafening. Arrows fill the air, so many arrows that they blot out the sun. Soldiers scream. Horses rear in terror. This is when most armies break. This is when soldiers run. But these aren't regular soldiers. They're Mamluks. They're trained for this. They're brothers. And they trust their commanders. Qutuz gives the signal. The Mamluks do something unexpected. They don't stand their ground. They don't hold the line. Instead, they break formation. They retreat. They run backward, creating confusion, raising clouds of dust. To the Mongols, it looks like victory. The enemy is fleeing. This is exactly what they expected. This is exactly what they've seen 100 times before. Kitbuga orders a deeper charge. Push forward. Don't let them escape. Press the advantage. Crush them. The Mongols surge deeper into the valley, chasing the retreating Mamluks. They're fully committed now. All their forces are involved. They're completely focused on the running enemy ahead of them. They don't see what's happening on either side. This is where genius meets execution. Baibars has been waiting for this moment. He has cavalry units positioned on both sides of the valley. Cavalry the Mongols don't know exist. Cavalry they can't see because of the dust, because of the terrain, because of the narrow confines of Ain Jalut. As soon as the Mongol force is fully committed, fully inside the valley, fully believing they're winning, Baibars gives the signal. The reserves attack from both sides simultaneously. It's a hammer blow, perfectly timed strike. The Mamluks surge out from their hiding places on the flanks. They hit the Mongol cavalry from the sides. Suddenly, the hunters have become the hunted. The predators are surrounded. The psychological shift is instant. The Mongols, who had been charging forward confidently, now realize they're trapped. They're outnumbered on their flanks. They can't retreat because Mamluks are attacking from behind. They can't spread out because the valley is too narrow. For the first time, they're not in control. Kitbuga tries to regroup. He's an experienced commander. He's fought in hundreds of battles. He knows what to do. He orders the cavalry to form defensive positions. He tries to create a coordinated withdrawal. But the Mamluks don't give him the chance. The battle now becomes a close-quarters melee. The wide-open cavalry charges that the Mongols excel at are impossible in the valley. The Mamluks close in on horseback. Swords clash. Lances thrust. Horses scream. Men fall. This is where Mamluk training becomes devastating. From childhood, they've trained for close combat on horseback. They've practiced sword techniques thousands of times. They've learned to fight in formation. They've learned to support each other. They're disciplined. They're coordinated. They're ruthless. The Mongols are warriors, but they're used to winning through superior tactics and psychological dominance. They're used to enemies breaking. They're used to quick victories. This is different. This is brutal. The sound of the battlefield is horrifying. Thousands of horsemen clashing. The screams of wounded men and dying horses. The metallic ring of swords striking swords. The thunder of hooves. Qutuz is everywhere. Rallying his men, leading charges, inspiring his soldiers. He's not just a commander. He's a warrior. His soldiers see him fighting. They see him refusing to give up. They see him absolutely believing they can win. Belief becomes power. The Mongol line starts to crack. Units that had been fighting together are now isolated. The coordination that made them dangerous is falling apart. Soldiers in one area don't know what's happening 200 yards away. The fog of war has descended. For the Mamluks, it's clarity. They have reserves. They have fresh cavalry coming in waves. They're replacing tired soldiers with rested ones. The Mongols are getting worn down, tired, wounded. And then Kitbuga dies. Historians aren't entirely sure how it happened. Some say he fell in direct combat. Some say he was killed while trying to organize a retreat. Some say he was wounded and trampled by his own cavalry. The details don't matter. What matters is the effect. When Kitbuga falls, Mongol command structure collapses. Without their commander, without clear orders, without faith in victory, the Mongol army loses cohesion. Small groups continue fighting, but the unified force is gone. That's when the break comes. Starts slowly. A unit of Mongols, seeing their commander fallen, seeing their flanks collapsing, attempts to retreat. Then another unit. Then another. From there, it becomes a full retreat. And then, something the Mamluks had been waiting for, the Mongols run. The pursuing cavalry chase them. The Mongols, for perhaps the first time in their campaigning history, become the prey. They scatter across the terrain. Mamluks cut down the stragglers. The valleys echo with screams and the sounds of slaughter. It's not complete annihilation, some Mongols escape. But it's a rout. It's a collapse. It's a defeat. The army that had conquered the world. The force that had seemed unstoppable. The warriors that had made kings quiver in their thrones. They're running. And the Mamluks, the slave soldiers, the men nobody thought could win, are chasing them down. By the time the sun sets on July 3, 1260, everything has changed. In the days after Ain Jalut, messengers ride out in all directions. The news spreads like a gospel. The Mongols can be beaten. The slave soldiers of Egypt defeated them. The Mamluks won. The psychological impact is massive. All across the Islamic world, people who had been living in terror suddenly feel hope. The Mongols aren't invincible. The psychological dominance they built through decades of victories was broken in a single afternoon. But more importantly, Ain Jalut stopped the Mongol expansion into Africa and the Middle East. If the Mamluks had lost, if Kitbuga had won, the Mongol Empire would have continued expanding. Egypt would have fallen. North Africa would have fallen. The entire trajectory of world history would have been different. Instead, the Mongols never conquered Egypt. They never got to North Africa. They never conquered the Islamic heartland completely. The Mamluk Sultanate became one of the great powers of the medieval world. And Baybars? He became a legend. In the years after Ain Jalut, Baybars rose to ultimate power. He became Sultan of Egypt. He ruled for 17 years. He's remembered as one of the greatest military commanders of the medieval period. He reformed the Egyptian military. He expanded Mamluk territory. He built monuments. But his greatest legacy was simpler than all of that. He proved that strategy could defeat brutality. That understanding could overcome raw power. That discipline and intelligence could beat the seemingly unstoppable. Qutuz didn't live to see Baybar's full rise. He was assassinated just months after Ain Jalut. But his moment of leadership, his moment of unifying the Mamluks and marching them north to meet the Mongol threat, that moment changed history. Here's what makes Ain Jalut so powerful, so worth remembering, not just as history but as a lesson. The Mongols were the most advanced military power on Earth. They had conquered more territory than any army in human history. They had seemingly unlimited resources. They had experienced generals. They seemed unstoppable. But they had a weakness. They believed their own mythology. They believed they couldn't be beaten. They believed their tactics were superior. They believed their confidence was justified. And that belief made them predictable. The Mamluks won because they didn't try to beat the Mongols at their own game. They didn't try to match their cavalry charges across open ground. They didn't try to overwhelm them with numbers. Instead, they changed the game. They understood their enemy. They found the terrain where the Mongol advantages meant less. They created a situation where the Mongol tactics could be used against them. They waited for the moment when overconfidence would blind the Mongols to danger. That's not luck. That's genius. That's strategy. In our world, in our lives, that lesson matters. The powerful, the confident, the seemingly unstoppable. They're often vulnerable to those who think differently, who understand them deeply, who refuse to play by their rules. Brute force can win battles, but strategy wins wars. So we return to the question we asked at the beginning. How did the Mamluks defeat the most feared war machine in human history? They did it by understanding that every advantage contains a potential weakness. They did it through training and discipline cultivated since childhood. They did it through unity and sacrifice and the willingness to risk everything. But most importantly, they did it because a man named Baibars sat on a hillside, looked at a valley, and asked himself a simple question. How can I use what my enemy knows against him? And when he found the answer, he executed it perfectly. Ain Jalut reminds us that history isn't written by the strongest. It's written by those brave enough to challenge the unquestionable, to question the inevitable, to believe that the impossible is just the untried. On July 3, 1260, in a valley in Palestine, the Mamluks proved that belief was worth everything. If you enjoyed this story of strategy, courage, and the moment that changed the world, please hit like so more people discover it. Subscribe to this channel for the next episode, where we explore more untold stories that shaped history. Because history isn't just what happened. History is proof that one moment, one brilliant decision, one brave action, one perfect execution can echo through centuries. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.